Welcome to my podcast, Guardians of Globalism, the shadowy power of central banks in advancing the globalist agenda. Before we begin, a quick note. If you are interested in this topic, you should definitely read Dr. Polleit's Boom and Bust report for investors who want to protect and increase their capital. All information can be found at www.boombustreport.com. And now it begins. Guardians of Globalism, the shadowy power of central banks in advancing the globalist agenda. Globalism, the plan for a new world order, a global Great Reset, suffered a significant setback in the United States of America with the election of Donald J. Trump as president, whose platform seeks to counter the deep state and liberate America from the grip of globalism. What does globalism mean? It is an ideological framework that seeks to end individual freedom and what little remains of the free market system, empowering a global council of state leaders or an enlightened elite to control and manage people's affairs. Its most recent manifestation is the Great Reset, promoted by the World Economic Forum, a prominent incubator of globalism with significant influence. However, the true guardians of globalism operate discreetly in the background, central banks and their councils. These institutions and their decision-makers make globalism and its economic, social and cultural consequences financially viable. Central banks provide highly favorable credit conditions, allowing governments to borrow heavily at low costs. This enables governments to finance their spending quietly on credit, masking the economic and employment losses caused by their globalist agenda from a misled public. Through policies of artificially suppressed interest rates and continuous money supply expansion, central banks create a deceptive illusion that conceals production and employment losses caused, for example, by green policies. Moreover, cheap debt funding allows the state to expand its influence, commanding scarce resources such as labor and capital and directing them towards initiatives aligned with the globalist agenda. As a result, an increasing number of people becomes dependent on the state for transfers, business opportunities and employment. Simultaneously, chronic goods price inflation caused by central bank money supply expansion impoverishes large segments of the population. Their income growth cannot keep pace with the true debasement of money, and the purchasing power of their savings erodes. This advances the globalist goal, reducing more and more people to dependent subjects reliant on state handouts, with economies increasingly tethered to the globalist agenda. In the US, President Trump's new budget proposal, the Big Beautiful Bill, fails to shrink the deep state through meaningful spending cuts. Instead, massive budget deficits of approximately 7% of GDP are likely to persist in the coming years. While Trump works to end America's aggressive, warlike foreign policy of recent decades, the Ukraine-Russia proxy war continues. This raises the question: has the deep state become too powerful, rendering financial and foreign policy reforms against its will impossible? Globalists are not retreating. They are increasingly targeting European taxpayers to fund their agenda. For example, the German government plans to take a massive €1 trillion in new debt, while the European Union intends to borrow €800 billion for infrastructure and defense initiatives. It is not difficult to forecast who will benefit from such a spending spree. The European Central Bank, ECB, has lowered interest rates from 4.5% in September 2023 to 2% in June 2025, ostensibly due to lower goods price inflation, but in reality to subsidize the faltering finances of many euro area governments and their globalist policies with low borrowing costs. Artificially low interest rates create the illusion of improved economic conditions, suggesting that economies are wealthier than they are and that people can afford to support the globalist agenda, including abandoning oil, coal and gas, permitting uncontrolled mass immigration, fueling inflation, undermining private property and suppressing individual freedom without dire consequences. Furthermore, low interest rates increase people's time preference, increasing the prioritization of present needs over future needs, thereby creating fertile ground for globalism to advance without significant resistance from a misled population. It is unsurprising then that the US central bank's interest rate hikes in early 2022 disrupted globalism in the United States. Consequently, globalists are now focusing on Europe, attempting to push populations into a new state of emergency, such as a war economy or even outright war. Hence their reluctance to end the Ukraine-Russia conflict. For globalists, a war economy is the ultimate scenario for establishing an all-powerful state with the surveillance and control systems they envision. Globalists are far from defeated. Against this backdrop, it is concerning that President Trump is urging the US Central Bank to lower interest rates again. Artificially low interest rates, combined with the deep state financed through ever-growing debt, are the fiercest adversaries of his agenda. The difficulty of curbing deep state spending, let alone implementing spending cuts, is evident in recent US budget proposals. That said, it would not be surprising if the Fed soon lowers interest rates, following the lead of other central banks around the world and granting the deep state highly attractive funding terms. With its interest rate cuts, the European Central Bank has pushed short-term interest rates in real terms, that is, the policy rate minus current inflation, back to or below zero, to the detriment of the euro's purchasing power, the material prosperity of euro area residents, their freedoms and their peace. It is evident that central banks, particularly the European Central Bank Council, are among the most powerful guardians of globalism. And so it is no coincidence that the globalism-inspired ECB policymakers plan to launch a central bank digital currency, the digital euro, as early as October 2025. A deeply troubling monetary concept with significant potential for abuse. It is high time to halt and dismantle the shadowy power of globalism's guardians. And now I say thank you very much for your attention. If you found this podcast interesting, please visit my website www.boombustreport.com and become a devoted reader of Dr. Polleit's Boom and Bust Report for investors who wish to protect their capital and really want to know the truth.